At 03:13 a.m., the red phone rang and the NASA official didn't say hello. He said this must not leak. A craft could hit. Every screen in firing room 4 flashed no data, and on the range map a target with no transponder slid toward the Crawlerway like it had read our floor plans. The PA cut from status loops to breathing, not static breathing, and the wall clock wrote 03:13:08 and then 03:13:08 again, as if time needed reassurance. My badge vibrated against my chest like it had grown a pulse. A tech whispered my own line under his breath, "Trust the room, not the rumor." The intercom repeated him back to us half a beat late, even though no one had touched the talk switch. "I'll play you that twice-written second. I'll show you the CCTV frame where the VAB windows flex with no wind. But first, hear the sentence that iced the room a second time. Maintain containment. Hands off the breakers." I was 42 and on a cross-badged assignment at the Launch Control Center, on the night shift that looks like boredom until it becomes a different species. My lane was integration, making sure the ground and the vehicle spoke the same language, that telemetry, power, and safety interlocks behaved like decent adults. You don't go to firing room 4 for romance. You go to count for a living to make sure boring is the only outcome anyone gets to write down. "Trust the room, not the rumor," is the phrase I teach new hires. Rumor is adrenaline with a vocabulary. The room gives you baselines, recorders, redundancy. On a good night, you leave with numbers that mean what they claim. 2015 gave us a string of pre-dawn sim windows, and I was running the boring book, reviewing pad umbilical readings, lightning tower impedance, a chore list you do so the next shift can pretend nothing ever goes wrong in Florida. The Crawlerway sat out there like a chalk scar, and the vehicle assembly building was doing its hulking cathedral impression under a sky that had chosen to be kind. The first hint was the red phone ringing. It doesn't ring for gossip. Our range liaison picked up and didn't get a greeting for his trouble. He got doctrine, this must not leak. A craft could hit. He put the pad of his thumb over the receiver and repeated craft like it might behave better if he said it softer. Out of reflex, 5 people looked at the range map at once. There it was. A skin on the S-band display that should have had a squawk and didn't, low, north, sliding on a line that paralleled the Crawlerway. Not a flock, not weather. Someone's dot without anyone's paperwork. Then the screens went no data like they'd been taught to misbehave in chorus. Telemetry bars grayed. UPS status trees went blind. Mode C values on the ATC repeater slumped to 0 with a dignity that felt like sarcasm. The PA did its trick. Status audio cut out and was replaced by slow measured breathing on the ceiling. Inhale. Exhale. From a system that only knows how to be binary. Someone at the next console said no, not to anyone but to the part of his brain that wanted to run. Someone else, younger, whispered my line, "Trust the room, not the rumor." The intercom immediately played him back, half a beat delayed, even though the talk light stayed dark. The clock above the main display showed 03:13:08, flickered, and then showed 03:13:08 again. A flight dynamics engineer wrote it on his palm with a pencil because paper felt too ceremonial. The badge readers at the rear doors scanned 2 late arrivals and printed 03:13:08 on both events, even though those men hadn't crossed the threshold at the same time. I remember that because my job is to remember what the room does when the rumor gets ambitious. "Maintain containment," the official said through the red phone, the way a surgeon says, "No one leaves." "Hands off the breakers. We don't chase this into a blackout. There is a way a room decides to not have a panic." The range safety rep crooked a finger and got a nod from me, which is how you vote in places where votes are verbs. Evacuation gets weighted against data, against not lighting the county on fire with a rumor. We stayed, we recorded. We took our hands off everything we might regret. Are you seeing the room? Dim floods, console glows. People speaking at half volume to keep thoughts from spilling. The hiss of air that isn't supposed to get an adjective. The range map put our dot in the place it loves and everyone else's dot where they'd filed it. The one dot without a name slid in as if physics had pulled back a chair. At 03:13:15 by the recorder, the target stopped moving over a line that runs from the VAB to the Crawlerway. The track showed 700 feet AGL, then no LT, then 700 again AGL, like someone had flicked a switch that rooms don't own. The dot tilted on the display. Nonsense, because dots don't tilt. But to eyes that had stopped pretending, it looked like attention. In the tower mics, we lost crickets, frogs, and the tiny sizzle of Florida's generous humidity. The lightning towers around the pad began a low hum I've only heard during afternoon spherics, not under a docile sky. The ground potential meters we park in dull corners because they're honest inverted for a heartbeat. Negative spikes like someone had pulled on Earth. A craft could hit, the official repeated. Not because it changed, but because his job requires incantations. Maintain containment. The CCTV on the VAB east face caught a single frame where the window ribbons along the high bays bowed inward and then outward as if the building had breathed. The wind sensors on the tower wrote nothing about gusts. A video operator said nope under his breath like a man paying a bill he hadn't agreed to. In firing room 4, you can hear when someone touches a breaker because the room shames you with clicks. No one did. The official had said hands off, and we had learned a long time ago that well-meaning resets are how you erase the only evidence you deserve. The UPS units kept their smug greens. The telemetry arrays kept saying no data, and then for a breath some data, then no again like a child negotiating bedtime. I thought the stupid thought, if it hits the Crawlerway, does concrete count as a patient? Then I thought the useful one, right. I put Aero 313, no data, dot at Crawlerway, PA, breathing, clock duplicate second, intercom echo into the log because logs keep you from lying to yourself in the morning. The dot held for 59 seconds by the recorder, 1 minute that felt like my chest had misplaced its home. The PA breathed with us. The room obeyed its training. And then the dot tilted again and rose, not ballistic, not performance, steps. If you told me there were stairs installed in the air that night, I would shake your hand and ask which contractor got that bid. The dot ascended in the kind of increments that let your body map it. 1, 1, 1, until it rejoined a sky that had decided to be ordinary again. The hum from the lightning towers unwound back into nothing. The ground potential wagged its tail and chose boredom. The VAB went back to pretending it had never owned the word breath. The PA returned in the middle of a status loop voice saying, copy green, as if it had never rehearsed lungs for us. Hands on log. Hands off breakers, I said, because sometimes your only job is to keep the theater out of the minutes. The intercom liked the shape of my sentence and repeated it back in my voice half a beat late, with the talk light still dark. We all remembered how to swallow. After action is where fantasy dies or earns rent. We met in a room that looks like every other NASA meeting room. Carpet that knows more than it says. Coffee that forgives you. Binders that believe they're scripture. We had artifacts and gaps in equal measure. ATC logs showed our beacon mode C from the local repeater dropout for roughly a minute. The same minute the room learned to be quiet. The range S-band skin track wrote a dot with no transponder that held and stepped up. The PA recording captured 6 to 7 seconds of clean breathing before the loop caught itself by the collar. The wall clock recording shows Aero 31308 twice and the badge system agreed. The VAB CCTV sequence has one frame duplicated by the time code, though a human eye would want to call it a shimmer. The ground meters show a negative pulse, which is not a phrase meters should know. The lightning towers logged harmonics we associate with near storms. Except no storm signed the attendance sheet. The CVS, Communications Voice System talkback, captured 2 instances of late echo with no key event on the console. My note, trust the room, not the rumor, exists in my voice twice, the second a half beat later. An audio engineer put a ruler on it and called it $480 Ms. He doesn't like that number because it belongs to human systems, not rooms. The official, the one who had said this must not leak, a craft could hit, stood in a corner of the room where the air conditioner makes you ask your sweater to try. He spoke precisely. Use the nouns your logs can stand behind: anomaly, data dropout, unidentified skin track. Do not name what you cannot audit. Containment is not secrecy. It is ethics. You don't let the public carry rumors you manufactured with impatience. I admired him for that second only. And then I remembered he had said craft could hit. He had named the room for us when it mattered most. You don't say craft in a firing room unless you mean to. We didn't cycle power. We didn't roll trucks. We didn't break the county open for a chase we couldn't brief. We sat with the room we had and wrote the room we saw, and the dot chose to leave. There is a discipline in that I will defend more quickly than I will defend any of our nouns. There were consequences, not the cinematic ones. The Monday after, my desk phone gave me 7 seconds of open line each hour at 13 with no voice. Polite nothing. That lasted 3 weeks like a habit someone was trying to break. My badge demagnetized at 03:13 a week later when no one was near the reader. The security log wrote access denied and timestamp doubled, then let me in without a reswipe. The thermal tape on the edge of a console, the cheap strip we use like a hand warmer for excuses, darkened where it was cool, and stayed pale where an IR gun said warm, a small mean trick that made a grown man apologize to paper. No one evacuated. No one died. No one will make a movie. But the room learned a sentence you do not put on posters. Sometimes the sky edits the room. Your job is to not edit it back. I went home at 8:10 and looked at my wife like I owed her an apology for the ambient math. She poured coffee in the shape of mercy and didn't ask any nouns I wasn't allowed to give. At 03:13 the next night, my phone lit and rested for 7 seconds. It did that for 3 Mondays like a gentleman trying to decide if he is rude. In the garage, my badge would vibrate once when I passed the breaker panel, which is not an instrument and does not owe vibration. If you want to say psychosomatic, I won't fight you. If you want to ask for logs, I have them. I didn't go on TV. I wrote a memo with the boring nouns that keep careers alive and rooms honest. In the margin of my personal notebook, I wrote a phrase a friend would call melodramatic and I would call maintenance. When the dot tilts, the room is being listened to. If you need me to say what it was, I will refuse and remind you my job is to say what it did and what we did. It made a room that lives on redundancy go briefly single. It turned a public address system into a metronome of lungs. It duplicated a second in 3 timekeepers that do not share a source. It stepped up like an elevator nobody summoned. It made a building that doesn't breathe. It made a grown engineer grateful for boring. Here are the anchors I can hand you like washers and say please don't turn them into rings. Red phone. This must not leak. A craft could hit. Maintain containment. Range map skin track, no transponder. 700 FT AGL. Hold. Step up ascent. Room. No data sweep. Pipe breathing. Intercom plays back our line half-beat late with no key. Time. 03:13:08. Duplicated. Wall clock, badge events recording. Structures. VAB windows flex on CCTV single frame. Towers hum. Ground meters negative pulse. After. 13 7-second calls. Badge demag at 03:13 once. Thermal tape inversion. I'll take your skepticism the way a good room takes power. Graciously and with a habit of logging. If you've sat in a control room and watched a second repeat or a PA breathe or a frame duplicate, while the policy in your pocket told you to keep your hands away from breakers, leave me one word below so I know we didn't invent this alone. Containment. No facility names. No coordinates. No procedures. Just the word. I read it like I read a countdown, carefully, then with quiet relief. Trust the room, not the rumor, I tell my students. The night the dot came to stand by our crawlerway, the room asked us to prove we meant it. We did. The rumor will do what it wants. The room kept counting, and the sky for 1 polite minute counted back.